Hi, everybody. Dom Tiberi here, joined by Jonathan T-Bone Smith. You hear him daily, 97.1 The Fan. And the news is not good when it comes to the Ohio State football team. Seth McLaughlin, the outstanding center that came to Ohio State from Alabama, was having a big-time year, was the leader of this offensive line. Apparent injury in practice, and he is done for the year. It's just heartbreaking. I mean, they've had more than their fair share of injuries, but this one really hurts. And it's like you and I were talking. The offensive center is the quarterback of the offensive line. You know, the quarterback's calling the plays. Well, the center's calling how they're blocking. He's telling the quarterback what he needs to know. And, this is a big loss because this guy brought a certain toughness. He brought leadership. And the critical time of the year couldn't come at the worst part.
No, it's you're prepping for the two biggest games of the season, the regular season. You're hoping there's another one the next week at, Big Ten championship game, and then beyond that, hopefully the playoffs. So to not have him available for all those games, this is a guy, Seth McLaughlin, who played for 24 games for Alabama. So, I mean, he didn't play in nothing games. He played in very important, impactful games. That's why you bring in a leader like that. I know we're kind of like just shoveling on to everyone already knows this is not great, who's a big Buckeye fan, but if you haven't been paying attention, it's not just losing your center, it's losing a guy who's a veteran in college football. That's why the transfer portal has been so big for a lot of teams like Ohio State, because you can go out and get veteran fifth-year guys who can come in and help kind of reinforce what you're already doing well. So it's a big loss for this team.
And, you combine that when they lost Josh Simmons, who was having an amazing year. That is two major injuries on this offensive line at the most critical part of the year. I mean, and the bottom line is Indiana's going to come into Ohio State. They're not going to feel sorry for the Buckeyes. No. If anything, they're going, oh, yeah, now we have an advantage. Yeah. The center's out.
Yeah, and that leaves a lot of uncertainty for Ryan Day, and obviously this coaching staff. They have to figure that out quickly on the fly. You are in the middle of getting ready for this week. I would guess that even among that, you are getting ready for a lot of what's coming up, you hope, right? So this is the most important time of the year. Not that it isn't important in August or September, but this is where they're finally getting to that place they get to play these games. And one more thing for Seth McLaughlin, I feel bad for him just because you come to Ohio State to play in games like this. I'm sure he's been looking forward to playing against Michigan. Now that won't happen. So a very rough thing there for him. But the Buckeyes have to figure out how to move forward with it.
Yeah, on the human side of it, next man up, it's easy to say and all that, but here's a kid that came here from Alabama, was going to have a promising career in the NFL. I've heard people say second, third round draft choice.
Sure.
And, when you have this type of injury to the Achilles, you're talking about a year out. I mean, he won't be, ready to do anything till a year from now. So if you're looking at the NFL, they're probably going to be taking, a chance on a guy that, you're going to say, well, play in 2 years. But, from just the human side of it, you feel terrible for this guy.
I do too. And I'm also thinking about, now I know a lot of Buckeye fans are obviously concerned about, so what happens this weekend? Because as much as it stinks for this guy and for Seth McLaughlin, I hate this for him, who's going to step up, right? And so the name that's being kicked around is Carson Hinzman. He played there last year.
12 games started at center.
Yeah, so that's experience, right? We talked about how that's important to have that experience. You wouldn't want someone who's maybe like a true freshman stepping into that spot, no matter how many stars they have next to their name. Carson Hinzman's a, redshirt sophomore, so that's a guy who has a chance to probably get involved there and hopefully do some good things. Ultimately, with this team, what I think matters is you're playing an Indiana team that cannot be overlooked.
No.
And we know what's going on with Team Up North. We know there's a chance to finally right that next week. And for Buckeye fans everywhere, that is a big deal. But you have a top 5 matchup, not on paper. I do think this Indiana team is definitely worthy of their record of being undefeated. I don't think they are just a lucky team.
No.
They've played a lot of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten on their schedule. But if you go look at how they've won these games, Indiana's beaten these teams by 2 touchdowns. Their average margin of victory this year is somewhere near 30 points. So I know they have some games where they won 70-0 that kind of influence that, but they're taking care of the bad teams. They are playing the good teams that they will play tough. And this is a huge test for them. They know. But Curt Cignetti, their head coach, Google him, right? That's what he keeps saying. Google me, I win. He's not lying. This guy had a background at Alabama. He helped recruit some major talent to Alabama when Nick Saban won his first national championship.
Right.
So you are talking about a guy who knows how to get talent. He built this program with a lot of guys from James Madison. He built it with transfers. But these guys are all 4th and 5th year guys. They're all people who have played in big time games. So they're ready to prove themselves. They've been hearing all this doubt. They come in now, and you've got this Ohio State offensive line that they are looking at as a vulnerability. I guarantee you Curt Cignetti is not unaware of this and is, I am quite sure, designing something to exploit this.
Yeah, I mean, he's tickled to death. As I said, they smell blood in the water. No one feels sorry for Ohio State, and Ohio State's always going to get everyone's best shot. And who would have guessed at the beginning of the year that we would be talking about a top 5 matchup between Ohio State and Indiana? Indiana's record the last 3 years, folks, was 2-10, 4-8, 3-9, and now all of a sudden with Curt Cignetti, they are 10-0, ranked 5th in the country, and they're going to come in here and they're going to have all kinds of things schemed up for the Ohio State offensive line now that Seth is out. And you're right about Carson Hinzman. There is, Ryan Day said, Bone, at the beginning of the year, he said that depth is going to be so important because it's going to be a long season. Depending on how things go, Ohio State could be looking at another 6, 7, 8 games or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
potentially,
we're saying like the
6 more.
halfway point, 6 more. And so he said, it's going to be a long season. We're going to have to develop players. Hopefully they have done that. We've seen guys get into games. There are some offensive linemen that have gotten in. But, you take out 2 big transfer players that came in, Simmons from San Diego State and now from Alabama, Seth McLaughlin. And, that stuff hurts. I mean, they're starting for a reason because they're that good. And, the toughness and the leadership that Seth brought to that O-line, I mean, he was the leader. He was the guy out there on the field that was – and you just don't replace that overnight. I've said that injuries are the great equalizer, and they are.
Sure.
I mean, you just can't predict that.
No.
But injuries, and this is a big one. This is a big one with 2 crucial games coming in the regular season. Hopefully, the Big Ten title game in Indianapolis, then you got a playoff run. And depending on if you can beat Oregon again, you got to get there now, but you got to get there.
Yeah.
And that is not, I really thought Ohio State would roll on Indiana this week. Now I'm going, well, this is the equalizer.
Well, and I think that depends on how you view Indiana coming into this game, right? Because I do think if someone looks at this Indiana roster and says, yeah, but Ohio State just has more talent, they do. And Ohio State, I would think, come 3rd quarter, come 4th quarter, that is where that extra talent, right? When guys are going to get beat up in this game, there are going to be knocks, there are going to be guys that get taken out of this game because they're just, something happens in it. It's a physical game. We know how football works, right? So usually Ohio State has the advantage there because once you get past that 1st and 2nd line of defense for most teams, they're just not going to have the horses that Ohio State has on the 2nd and 3rd string. Now Ohio State at center, at one of the most important positions, is on that 2nd string already, and you're reshuffling guys. Now, thankfully, they have a bunch of studs. They have a bunch of dudes who have played, who know how to get the job done, hopefully. But certainly Ohio State's offensive line last year was a work in progress at times. Right. Now you're going to be reverting back to some of the people who were involved in that. Hopefully they've improved, right? This is college football. This is part of why Ryan Day gets paid $10 million. His assistant coaches get another $10 million, is because they're supposed to develop guys for these moments, even if they're not starting, to come in and play well. But I think you have to look at the fact this is going to change the offense a bit, I would think, for Ryan Day. You have to consider now, can we afford to keep the ball in Will Howard's hands for very long? Or do we get the ball out quickly? Do we try to, is the offense, are we going to see a lot of down the field type of stuff? Or are we going to see a lot of stuff getting out of his hands in a couple seconds very quickly? Because Indiana's going to be coming after it and trying to attack the weak point, what they presume to be the weak point of this offensive line now. And
the key for you folks that, the offensive center, I can't stress enough how important that position is. The old joke goes, and I played center, they say the smartest guy on the football team's the center, because the center literally is the quarterback part 2. He calls the blocking. when he goes up and he looks, and if you watch a game, watch pros, college, high school even, you'll see the center is the guy pointing, and he's telling his lineman next to him what to do. And Seth has this offense down to a T, and the blocking and the relationship that he had with his quarterback and Will Howard, because Will Howard will make checks based on what the center is telling him.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, at the most crucial time of the year, all of that is changing.
Yeah.
And the good news is they've got a couple days to get Carson Hinzman ready and back up to speed and doing that. The bad news is you're at the most critical part of the year, and you've got a team in Indiana that's coming in here. You've got a coach. I mean, think about this. When this guy was hired, and he tried to deflect a little bit, and he tried to go back to what Jim Tressel did when he got hired. But Jim Tressel just said, if you'll remember, that you'll be proud of the Buckeyes in 300 and some days in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He didn't say anything derogatory about Michigan. When this guy got hired, he went into their basketball arena and said that he's never taken a backseat to anyone, and he's not about to start now, and that Purdue sucks, and so does Ohio State and Michigan. He said that.
Oh, he's a Pittsburgh guy. The Pittsburgh guys don't pull any punches,
Oh,
Dom.
my
You know that.
goodness.
They're eating fries on their sandwich, and they're just living life out there.
And he is a guy that is scheming now in his head. And, you know, as sad as Ryan Day and the Buckeyes are over what's going on with their O-line, this guy is giddy.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
of course.
and I don't want to say that he's happy someone got hurt.
No.
But he's going, hey, I now have a shot here with this.
I'll tell you, though, in watching, because I've been fascinated by Curt Cignetti, and he is the type of person in sports radio we look for, because we're like,
yeah.
oh, man. Just like when Deion Sanders came into Colorado, he gives you something to talk about. There
Right.
are a lot of quotes, good, bad, or otherwise, whether you like him or don't. You know he's going to say something that's interesting. And so I have watched a lot of Curt Cignetti's interviews. I have read up a lot on him. I have followed some of his career and looked back on stuff. This guy was on a pathway that usually leads to you being a head coach at Bama, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, USC. He was a wide receivers coach at Alabama, helped recruit a bunch of the talent that helped him win a national championship. And then he went to a college called Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of the Pittsburgh area. I'm guessing he went there to go back home and to try to be a head coach in an area that he felt comfortable with. But then you look at where he's coached since then. I think he coached at Elon. He coached at James Madison was the most recent game before Indiana.
Brought a bunch of guys from there.
Yeah, but this is a guy that if you're a wide receivers coach at Alabama, you tend to then go be an offensive coordinator somewhere.
Right.
You tend to go be and work your way up to that next level. He chose a different path. This guy doesn't look at himself in the mirror and think, gosh, I'm just lucky we're here. This is a guy he was on the field when, if you remember, Phillip Rivers coming in with NC State back in 2003, that nail-biting 3 overtime game. He was an assistant coach on that staff. So he's been in Ohio State on those sidelines. He has helped coach a team. Now, granted, not the head coach, but he's been on the sidelines with a good quarterback, with a good offense, with a bunch of kids who were doubted, who were brought in. I'm not trying to give Buckeye fans more to be anxious about. What I'm telling you is this is not, as the SEC people want you to believe, some dreg of the Big Ten that just got lucky in Indiana. They're a solid team. They're well coached. I would be surprised if Curt Cignetti is not continually getting this team or whatever other university he eventually coaches for into the top 5 on a repeated basis. So you have your hands full this weekend regardless, and now you have another wild card thrown in with this injury. So for the Buckeyes, the positive thing to look at is this. Overcome this, and you start to gain that confidence,
Right.
You can overcome anything. If something else happens in the Michigan game, if something happens when you're playing against Oregon, you're down 10, if you can overcome something like this in this game week with all this hype and everything else on it, this is how you get a championship level team to realize they have that championship capability. So it's not all negative for Buckeye Nation, of course. There is something that we can have here that hopefully if they can come through and come out of this on the other side with a nice win, you start to feel that confidence. Carson Hinzman or whoever steps into that spot feels stronger. So a lot could still be had here, and it's not the end of the season by any stretch of the imagination because you lost your center. It's just a big frustration to have in this type of week.
Let me say a couple things. First of all, I like Curt Cignetti. I like what he says. He's maybe the football version of what they had in Bob Knight over there. You don't know what he's going to say.
They're calling him the Dom Tiberi of the Big Ten, is what they're saying.
I don't know. And he's an older guy. He's been around. His pathway has been weird, but I don't wish him any luck this week.
No,
but
of course not.
I think that he's good for the conference. I think he's good for college football. He's a flavor, and I enjoy him. I like hearing him talk. You don't know what I saw him go on McAfee's show. And
sure.
Now, let me say this. Adversity, I believe sports and teams, and I know you believe the same thing, soccer, whatever. Your family. Your teammates are your family.
Sure.
And you do all this stuff together, the blood, sweat, and tears. And when one of your family members go down, it breaks your heart. But adversity sometimes brings teams tighter together. And I will tell you, folks, while a lot of people are saying, oh, my gosh, this is the end of the season, this is whatever, I heard the same kind of rhetoric in 2014. I heard the same kind of rhetoric when Ohio State got down to its third quarterback in 2014. And I would argue, as important as the center is, the quarterback is pretty daggum important too. And I remember they started the year and their quarterback threw his arm out. And here's this kid, J.T. Barrett, who goes in there and got clobbered against Virginia Tech.
Yep.
And everybody, it's the end of the year, it's this. And this team kept getting better, kept getting better, kept getting better. And then all of a sudden we get to the Michigan game, and J.T. Barrett gets hurt.
Yep.
And everyone's going, oh, my goodness, we could have gotten to the, we beat Michigan, and we can get into the Big Ten title game, but can we beat Wisconsin with 12 gauge, Cardell Jones? I remind you folks that what happened. It was, I will still say, to as my career, 43 years, it was the three greatest games I ever saw consecutive in Ohio State history. Ohio State went to that Big Ten title game and destroyed Wisconsin.
Yep.
Left no doubt that they should be in. They get in. The national title game was that game against Alabama. Zeke driving it down their throat, 12 gauge, doing what he did, and then they beat Oregon to win the national title. And guess what? A lot of you folks out there were saying, we have no business in this game. We don't have to. And so, you know what? This is a horrible, horrible thing that happened to Ohio State with Seth. You feel terrible for this young man, and he's in my prayers, and I hope he recovers because he's a good guy, and I really like him. But this will bring this team closer together, and hopefully we see a repeat of what we saw in 2014.
You know what? I was just going to say the parallels to that. You had to go through Michigan, right? That was part of it, a Big Ten team in Wisconsin, I guess. But you had to beat Michigan. That was part of that run. You then had to beat Oregon. As, of course, that was the last game in that run. They won the national championship. And then you had to beat a team that wore crimson that had a,
we had no chance.
That had no chance against. I mean,
Had no chance against Miami in 2002.
Right. Kurt Cignetti has those ties to Alabama like we were talking about. I'm just saying, I don't think this is as daunting as going through what they did before. Again, a totally different team, totally different era, coaching staff. But this can be Ryan Day's kind of signature moment here, getting his team through this adversity, winning this game, beating Michigan, hopefully, and then go from there. If you can do those two things these next 2 weeks, but it starts this weekend. You can't look past this Indiana team at all.
And the last thing I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, and I know you agree with me because we've grown up here and we've seen sometimes the best team does not win in the series against that team up north. They are struggling. Make no mistake, it would make their year to beat Ohio State. That would be their national championship if they could beat Ohio State this year.
It's literally all they have to play
That's
for.
and that's the only thing they're pointing to. Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State. The Buckeyes had better be ready to get hit in the mouth in 2 weeks. And that's another team that doesn't feel sorry for them. They want to make it 4 wins in a row over Ryan Day. So, I hope Ohio State goes cuckoo crazy the next 2 games. But they got to keep the blinders on. They've been delivered a bad blow, but they can overcome this. They overcame it in 2014, And I got a feeling you'll be talking about this today.
Oh, yeah.
Tell the folks where they can hear you today.
3 to 6 p.m., 97.1 The Fan, Monday through Friday, Common Man and T-Bone. It's available on YouTube. It's available on anywhere you get your podcast. So even if you don't catch us live, check us out there.
Check him and Mike Riccardotti out. T-Bone, you are the best. Thank you. Keep it on 10 TV, 97.1 The Fan, and all of our optional, what do we call these?
Digital platforms.
Digital platforms.
We're on a digital platform.
We're here for you all the time. We'll see you guys later.